We are recording. Okay. Okay, great. So only studied on Mrs. Dalloway the first couple of days. First day I only wrote down see Moodle notes. So you may want to check that out in study time. And then I wrote down especially empire, post-war, psychology, gender, and death. Um, Mostly you'll base it off of today's notes. They were better. Um, Also keep in mind he may take a line that okay, so like a common line in Heart of Darkness was the horror just as a word as a whole. He may throw in a reference to that in the quiz, except it'd be for Mrs. Dalloway instead of Heart of Darkness. So remember the lines from 2159 and 2175 that include horror or horrible or something along those lines. Another way you'll be able to identify it is Virginia Woolf commonly refers to makes Shakespeare references and pulls Shakespeare excerpts from her work. Also, you may or may want to consider finishing or not finishing the book. Just know that you didn't finish it. There may be some things that you might not be able to identify. But first of all, on Empire, it touches up on a few things. First of all, it touches on this because there's a lot of national pride circulating through the book. Peter thinks about it a lot. Richard thinks about it a lot. Mrs. Dalloway says herself that she would die for her country and wants to see the Royal Jack flying all across the flag. And so despite the war and what it should have done to national sentiment, it's still pretty strong. Or maybe it is a little weak and it doesn't really refer to pre-war national sentiment. But pre-war and post-war comparisons are also pretty common in this book, and generally it gives a pretty bad outlook, especially looking at the character Septimus, who after the war he experiences no feelings, and a lot of people consider it a sin of his that he doesn't feel anything, but he doesn't have any emotional attachment to his wife or anything. The only person he may have ever had romantic feelings for actually is one of his commanders named Evan, and this touches on another theme of the book, which is kind of new to literature at the time, is openness to different sexualities. He's also seen a lot of cruelty in the world, and so just know post-war mindset for the test. Individualism is also really key to Septimus as a character. He sees it as a reason for his suicide in the end because he doesn't want to consider himself owned by Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. Bradshaw is not a fan of individualism, and that's about all you really need to know about him. Clarissa experiences a lot of the emotions that Septimus does. First of all, her not pride in individualism, but her seeking it, especially because like in the latter years of her life she pairs up with Richard and kind of loses that individualism. She admires Septimus for killing himself for the sake of individualism. Also, it should be noticed that Septimus. Oh, never mind. Let's touch on that later. Clarissa also shares homosexual feelings with Septimus, except she sees it in the eyes of her friend Sally, and she sees the time that Sally kissed her on the lips as the time that changed everything in her life. Can read my fucking handwriting. Oh yeah. Also, something touched on by Clarissa is that she no longer so like this whole individuality thing kind of revolves around her not feeling as much life in her, and that's kind of the same thing with her not sexuality, but how sexual she is. She's getting sick at this time, contemplating her life, and she also doesn't like really experience sexual feelings anymore. She feels about like a virgin at this time, and that's partially because she seems to be kind of approaching the deathbed. She also hates Kilman, who I didn't really run across in my reading, I guess, oddly enough, very much. But Kilman is the lover of Clarissa's daughter, um, Elizabeth. Kilman is a born again Christian and is of a lower class and uses that religion to kind of oppress Elizabeth. And then at the end, Kilman loves Elizabeth despite all that, but Elizabeth leaves them regardless, and it's considered like the most freeing experience for Elizabeth. Um, Also, a theme touched on in the book is gender fluidity. Also, how short-term happiness can be. There are a lot of mood swings, especially for Septimus and Clarissa, as to whether they're happy or not. And so, basically, another reason Septimus kills himself is because he's got a moment of happiness. He's experiencing like this happiness with his wife that he's never felt before, and he decides to just end it there before it gets much worse. And Clarissa admires that eventually because she realizes that happiness is short term, and even if like really good things happen, you're eventually going to move away from those things, and then it's going to be depressing thinking about those things. And so that's another reason she admires it. Death is kind of just touched up on this book as not really a big deal, and that's all could a lot relates to the fact that Virginia Woolf would kill herself in latter years. Um, Individualism, again, a really important theme. Finally, there's this scene where she like is looking out her window at this old woman who lives in the house down the street from her or something, and is observing this woman for a really long time, and it doesn't seem to have any significance. Professor says that this is significant because it's where Clarissa comes. That Clarissa's Mrs. Dalloway, by the way. It's where Clarissa comes to the realization that she shouldn't fear death anymore because she sees this old woman. This old woman's acknowledged that death is just a part of life and that there's no reason to be afraid of it, so just carry on with your life. And so the line is no more fear no more the heat of the sun. And so she leaves the room where there's life in the where there's the party going on, and that's how she experiences life again. So again, main themes are empire, post-war mentality, psychology. The psychological aspect of the book is just the fact that it like really takes an in-depth look at the thinking of several people in just one day, because this entire book happens over the course of one day. And I think that about covers it.